My friends, this is not a joke or fake news. The biggest Russian military blogger shared this information yesterday that Ukrainian forces have crossed the Dnipro river and have actually liberated one settlement already and are forcing themselves onto the next one. We're talking this area near the Kherson settlement, actually not over the Antonovsky bridge because it's broken, you cannot really cross it, but they forced the Dnipro river and liberated the settlement of Boima. Yes, Boima has been liberated. Imagine you live in this settlement, you have been so close to your homeland and your home army, the Ukrainians, for a year, and now suddenly, boom, they are here. How did this come to be? I myself have reported that nothing big is going to happen on this front because the Ukrainians might not have the capability for it. Well, I'm now going to reenact the Russian mind thought process of how this actually happened. My commander, we have drone footage of Ukrainians gathering forces in Kherson. Armor and personnel. I think we should be getting ready right now to fight them. Ivan, nonsense. What are you talking about? Ukrainians will never cross the river. Trust me, I am general. I have been in army for 50 years. I know what I'm doing. So take 7 Air Assault Brigade, the Saintnik, and send them to the north, to Zaporozhye. We don't need him here. And replace them with, let's see, territorial defense. Very good. Молодец, Ivan. Now, пошел нахуй. I'm not kidding you. Recently, the 7th Air Assault Brigade of the Russian Armed Forces, so one of the elite brigades, was sent to Zaporozhye to fortify the front near Verbove. And they were replaced with the Territorial Defense Brigade. And there's also the 70th Infantry Division. So these Territorial Defense Brigades in the Russian army mostly less equipped and less manned and poorly trained, and they don't even have vehicles to move around usually, so they're not very mobile. And they are the ones defending this frontal area where Ukrainians just crossed and actually broke through their defenses. This fact makes this Kherson defense area for the Russian armed forces one of the weakest frontal areas in the entire occupied Ukraine. My friends, I went to Ukraine in September, and in there was insane adventures because we survived 4 Russian missile attacks, we shot weapons with the Ukrainian special forces, and we visited troops in the hospital. We did more insane stuff, and if you want to see it, on 21st of October you can, on my channel. The whole documentary is coming out, so check this Saturday on my channel and you'll see it. Here is the trailer for it. Slava Ukraini! You can fix this car with a beer can. There is X.
It was a Lada.
It was, yeah, you can see it. There's like a pink dildo underneath there. Oh! I'm dancing around there like a little girl, you know?
Kick me in the dick, I'm alright. It's the balls, you know?
Slava Ukraini! Also, my friends, if you cannot wait, then go to my Instagram, because everything that happens, all of these insane adventures are up on my Instagram before they go to YouTube. In real time, you'll see everything that happens. I'll see you in my Instagram. Rebar, the biggest Russian military blogger, confirms the Ukrainian liberation of the settlement of Boima, and also there are reports that Ukrainians are right now entering the settlement of Avdiivka. Of course, by the time that you see this video, situation has changed, because for some reason Ukrainians are able to move extremely fast right now on this front. 8 hours later, by the time you see it, they might have already taken Sagi, I don't know how to call it. But who are the Ukrainian forces doing it? Well, there are the contingents of the 35th and the 36th Marine Brigades. They crossed the Dnipro, so we're talking about 2 whole brigades crossing the Dnipro without Russians even noticing or getting ready for it. And the weird fact is that the Russians actually did notice. There are majors and higher officers who reported this information to the Russian Ministry of Defense. But the Russian Ministry of Defense, of course, what do you know, didn't care at all, and still sent the 7th Air Assault Brigade to fortify Verbove near the Zaporizhzhia front, leaving this frontal area almost defenseless. And this is what the Ukrainians are exploiting right now. Now, there's an insane amount of first-person view drone footage coming out of this crossing operation yesterday. So many, too many to count actually, so I have put them all up here and sped up so you don't have to watch them all. Let's just say that the Russian Territorial Defense Brigade brigade that was manning this frontal area with the few vehicles they have, well, these vehicles now are knocked out cold. They are no more. This crossing of the Dnipro is such a big news that I would never think that there is something more. But wait, there is. There is something more as big or even bigger. I'm not kidding you. Long-range Atacms are in Ukraine. How do we know this? Well, because the office of the chief of the general staff of the armed forces of Ukraine, so Zaluzhny's office, shared a video of them using Atacms to strike the Berdyansk airfield 2 days ago. Now, Berdyansk airfield is over 50 kilometers away from the front line, meaning they couldn't use the regular Himars munitions they have. They used Himars to do this, so this means it's the long-range Atacms. We have also reports from United States officials who actually confirmed that yes, the first batch of about 15 long-range Atacms has been sent to Ukraine. And Ukraine used about 7 of them to strike the Berdyansk airfield, which means they have about 7 to 8 of them left. But don't worry, my friends, this is only the first shipment. It's the test quantity. And this test quantity was used very effectively because the Berdyansk airfield attack that I reported like yesterday or 2 days ago, we now have the outcome. And what is the outcome? 9 Russian choppers knocked out cold. I'm not kidding you, this is insane. Not in any day of this war before has Russia lost 9 choppers at once, except for the first 3 days of war. So this is the biggest Russian aviation loss of a single day after the first 3 days of war. There was a Ka-52, there was an Mi-28, there was an Mi-24 and 6 more choppers that we don't have confirmations of type yet, but we know that they are knocked out cold. Now this already illustrates what the long-range Atacms can do. They are precise and a lot cheaper than the Storm Shadow. The thing is, Storm Shadow has the same capabilities. It is precise, it is stealth, and it can reach targets very far away. But my friends, Storm Shadow costs £2.5 million per piece, while long-range Atacms, which were made like in the 90s, cost a lot less. They are expensive, but they don't compare to Storm Shadow. But you know what's even crazier? Not the fact that Ukraine actually has long-range Atacms, but with that one single attack on Berdyansk with these Atacms, we already saw Russian anti-air capabilities and radar capabilities against these missiles. And let's say that the capability is non-existent. What exactly happened? We know that the Berdyansk airfield was defended by a Buk anti-air defense system and a Russian early warning radar system, none of which reacted to this missile attack in any way, meaning that these long-range Atacms missiles can penetrate through the Russian air defense shield, no questions asked. Huge news for Ukraine and also huge news for United States, I think. Great news. But you know, it gets even crazier. Believe me, how can this get even crazier? Well, it can. Listen to this. All of these defense systems, some of them among Russia's most modern, have been overtaken by the old Atacms M39 Block 1. M39 Block 1. That was in the 90s. So this is 90s technology. 90s United States missiles, and these are modern Russian anti-air defense systems. And since now we're actually going into a little bit of an analysis of the M39 Block 1 missile, what Ukraine actually has made in the 90s, I'm going to read you a thread because it gets very technical and I can't memorize it all. This missile model is the first Atacms variant and the only one that can be launched from all Himars platforms, the M270 and the French and German sisters. The M39 Block 1 is a cluster munition missile that can disperse up to 900 M74 anti-personnel and anti-aircraft bombs, APAM. So it's a cluster munition. Ukraine used the first Atacms missile to strike Berdyansk, and it was a cluster munition that disperses almost 1,000 little bomblets. This is how they could use about 5 or 6 Atacms to take down 9 choppers, because it's a huge area weapon. Incredibly effective. This one attack proves its effectiveness. To be able to strike targets 100 kilometers away incredibly accurately with cluster munitions. This is a whole new capability in Ukraine. The range of the M39 Block 1 is 165 kilometers. And here, my friends, you can actually see the range of 165 kilometers. Why is this so important? Since Ukraine already has Storm Shadow, which has a similar range or longer, well, I already talked about it. There are targets that are much less valuable, for example, in this range, that cannot be used for Storm Shadow because Ukraine has very few of them and they're so expensive. Ukraine needs something more disposable, something more cheaper and faster to use, which is Himars with 165 kilometer cluster munitions. What does this actually do? Well, in the south, my friends, Ukraine has already destroyed most of the Russian logistical systems, and the Russian army groupings in the south have already suffered through slow attrition for the longest time, and it's beginning to show because Russian artillery is losing every battle against Ukrainian artillery. They're not that precise, they don't have that many munitions anymore, and most of the logistics happens through Crimea, going to the south with a huge circle. In the north and east, it's the opposite story. These Russian groupings, army groupings and units are much closer to the Russian land territory, which means the railways and roads actually work pretty fine. And Ukrainians were not able to take them out because they're further away also. This logistics here works. What changes now? What changes now is that Ukraine is able to strike these logistical hubs in the rear of the Russian army, in the north and east also, putting Russian units in attrition the same way they are in the south, losing tons of artillery pieces per day. And the result will be what we're seeing right now in the Kherson, where Ukrainian forces crossed and actually found themselves against Russian territorial defense forces with low ammunition, low equipment, low morale and low training. This will be the future in the south, because the south is under heavy attrition, and in the long run it will be the future of Russian northern and eastern army groupings. But this was only the Russian logistics part of it. The long-range Atacms has a huge role to play in the Russian aviation, namely the Ka-52. Let's get into that. See, one of the greatest Ukrainian obstacles in the southern counteroffensive, in addition to the Surovikin line and the Russian defense structures, is actually the Russian Ka-52. This chopper can fire its missiles 10 to 15 clicks away from the front line. It fires the Lemur anti-armor missiles. They are guided. The Ka-52 fires them 10 clicks away, then disengages. The missiles find their way to Ukrainian targets and unfortunately take out Ukrainian armor very efficiently without the Ka-52 being in danger, because Ukrainians cannot shoot it down from the front 10 clicks away. Now the thing is, these Ka-52s have to land somewhere, and they usually do, not 50 kilometers from the front, but out 100 kilometers from the front, away from the previous Himars capabilities. Well, now the Himars is 165 kilometers capability, meaning these choppers have to land now 170, 180, 200 kilometers away from the front, meaning it will take them a lot longer to get to the front, pushing the Ka-52 further from the front, or it will face destruction on the ground like happened in Berdyansk. Gives Ukrainians a crazy early warning capability. The early warning itself can already save a lot of armor and lives. Unfortunately, I hate to say this, but the Ka-52 is one of the better, if not the best, Russian helicopters, and it is very good at what it does. Destroys Ukrainian armor without losing, the chopper itself, because it can shoot very far away. Well, now it cannot be in Berdyansk anymore, where it was safe before. Now it has to go far deeper into Russia, which means it takes a lot longer to get to the front lines, which means Ukrainians have the early warning. They have the option to focus their air defense Stingers, for example, into some frontal area, taking down the Ka-52 from the air, because they have a few more minutes before it arrives. And this is what is vital. In the battlefield, minutes count. So, I will summarize it all. The long-range Atacms will have two major impacts. One of them will be against Russian logistics, and the second one will be against Russian aviation, namely the Ka-52 attack helicopter, which has been one of the more effective Russian means of destroying Ukrainian armor. These two factors are a huge blow for the Russians in the future. But it gets even better, and I know you're thinking, how can this get even better? It's so good already. Well, my friends, Putin is in Beijing right now, meeting with Xi Jinping in the conference of Belt and Road Initiative. Now, he commenced the Avdiivka offensive operation, which was a huge failure. I mean, Russians lost in a week about 300 plus armor pieces and 4,000 troops knocked out cold in one offensive operation to Avdiivka. A huge colossal failure. Why did he commence it? Because he needed some tangible gains to show to Xi Jinping, because one of the Belt and Road Conference topics in China, in Beijing, is the New World Order. And they're supposed to be Russia and China, one of the biggest players of this New World Order. And what better way to have more strength behind your words if you can show a military gain, a military success on the battlefield? Well, in Beijing, Putin got the news that Avdiivka offensive is a total failure. Then he got the news that 9 choppers have been knocked out cold in Berdyansk. Then he got the news that Ukraine now has the long-range Atacms cluster munitions. What? And then he got the news that Ukrainians have crossed the Dnipro and actually have liberated 2 settlements already. And with that, Putin is going to shake Xi Jinping's hand and talk about the New World Order. Well, comrade Putin, you are being pulled right back into the old world order where United States is king. We have analyzed countless Avdiivka offensive videos, but new and new ones keep coming out, and I still am surprised of the tactics that Russians are using. And I will show you the first couple of seconds of this Russian offensive to Avdiivka. It comes from the north, from Novokharivka, straight to Avdiivka. From this road, you can actually see a Russian convoy. What a surprise there that they're using a convoy on a single road, which is probably a Ukrainian set-up kill box. Well, let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I count 8 vehicles, tanks and infantry fighting vehicles, straight in a convoy. Well, since I watched and analyzed the whole video, I can tell you what happens. The first one hits a mine. The second one is destroyed by Ukrainian anti-tank guided munition, Stugna. Then the rest of the 6 vehicles try to bypass the first 2 destroyed ones from the fields, and they fall under Ukrainian artillery barrage. The vehicles get knocked out cold one by one. The infantry disembarks. And I would think they would fall back or retreat. But actually no. I gotta give it to the Russian infantry here. They actually start to charge. Start to offense from the same road. What do? They don't spread out into the fields or forests. They take into one single line on this very same road and start advancing on Russian positions in one single line. What's the outcome of that? Well, I'll tell you, yeah, they're all knocked out cold. That's how this attack failed. And it just illustrates, not an isolated attack. This is how the entire week of Avdiivka offensive went for the Russians. Day after day, this very same pattern continues without any success. And now, my friends, the favorite part of the video, the butchering of the Patreon names. I have 5 new names here, which I'm very thankful for making me able to go to Ukraine, go to the shooting range and do some videos with my friends there. All of this is possible thanks to the Patreons. We have Brucke, we have Jörgen Närkling, we have Kevin Hobert, we have we have Nick Vricht. Thank you to the Patreons. And if you like my channel, you know what to do. Until my next video, my friends, which will be tomorrow, Slava Ukraini, and bye bye.